Elvis Presley's Graceland is the most visited private residence in the United States, receiving over 650,000 visitors per year, and today we're going to talk about why. Sitting on around 14 acres at 3764 Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis, Tennessee, this iconic home is recognized on the National Register of Historic Places and has been declared a National Historic Landmark. Elvis bought the Graceland house in 1957 at the age of 22 for just over $100,000, and he spent a ton of time there over the next 20 years until he tragically passed away in the summer of 1977. The home has been open to the public as a walkthrough museum since 1982, where you can experience the grounds, the mansion itself, some of Elvis's clothing, and his classic cars. Basically, everything around Graceland is open to the public to enjoy, except for one area that we'll talk about here in a bit that has been 100% off limits and sealed shut for the past 40 years. Today, we're going to dive into the backstory on this special residence, recognized as one of the most famous historic homes in the world. Now, if you've never heard of Elvis Presley before, you've probably been living under a rock because he's pretty widely accepted as one of the most significant cultural figures of our time. We won't get into Elvis's backstory too much here because today I want to focus on the house, but for anybody out there who's younger or just isn't tuned in with why this house is so famous, Elvis Presley was an American musician and actor who sold over 1 billion records worldwide. He starred in 31 feature films, and due to his success and influence on music through the 1950s and 1960s, he's famously known as the King of Rock and Roll. Elvis was married once from 1967 to 1973 to Priscilla Presley, and he had one child named Lisa Marie Presley, who was born in February 1968. Even though Elvis and Priscilla did divorce, they remained friends and they co-parented their daughter Lisa Marie until Elvis's passing in 1977 at the age of 42. Following Elvis's death and through today, Priscilla has spent 45 years preserving his legacy and managing his estate, which is now estimated to be worth around $300 million. Going back to the Graceland house, let's next dive into some of the details and what made this house such a special place for Elvis. Now, this property was originally owned by a guy named Stephen Toof. When he owned it, it was just a farm that he named Graceland Farms after his daughter Grace. That was the daughter who ended up inheriting the property when her dad passed away in 1894. Grace didn't do much with Graceland Farms either, and when she passed away, she handed it down to her niece, Ruth Moore. Ruth and her husband Thomas are the couple that ultimately built the house that still stands on Graceland to this day. When they built this place, it was back in 1939, and originally it was a little over 10,000 square feet. It was a classic revival style house that was designed by a prominent Memphis architectural firm named Furbringer and Ehrman. The National Register of Historic Places registration form from 1991 gives us a ton of detail on the historical significance of the home itself, and then of course its ties to Elvis Presley. In this form, they start by getting into the history and architectural significance of the house, which we just talked about, then describing the home as a 5-bay, 2-story neoclassical revival structure with 2 single-story wings. This form is what ultimately landed this home on the National Register of Historic Places, which was a huge win for the estate. A lot of the language in there does talk about what the house originally looked like compared to what Elvis did to kind of make it his own. And then of course they also go on to talk about the changes that have happened since Elvis's passing to accommodate the hundreds of thousands of people who visit the house every year. The meditation garden is detailed in here next, which is a part of Graceland where Elvis was said to have spent a good amount of time for contemplation and meditation. And then this is actually now the area where Elvis, his mother, his father, and his grandmother are all buried, with an eternal flame placed at the head of Elvis's tomb. I read a bit more into this part of the story, and apparently it actually was not easy to get approval to have the family buried here at the house. I mean, Graceland was never zoned as a cemetery, so it makes sense that the city wouldn't want bodies to be buried there. Because of that, initially Elvis was buried with his mother in Forest Hill Cemetery, but after a failed break-in by some grave robbers who were trying to break into Elvis's grave to steal the copper coffin that he was buried in, the family then fought to get the bodies moved to Graceland, which was a much safer place because it's under 24-hour surveillance. The Graceland home sits at about 17,500 square feet today, which is about twice the size that the home was when Elvis first bought it. He is said to have spent around $500,000 carrying out renovations around the home after after he bought it, which included adding all of that extra square footage. If we go back to that National Register of Historic Places document, we can get a pretty good feel of the flow of the site of Graceland and the home itself. Starting here with the site plan, Graceland is accessed right here off of Elvis Presley Boulevard. And then after you pass this little guard gated house, which is marked A, you wind up towards the property with the main house from 1939 marked here with the letter C. Over here on the south side of the property is the swimming pool, which is marked J, and then the meditation garden, which we were just talking about, which is marked K. Then out back, we have the racquetball building, which is marked M. Elvis spent a lot of time here. And then these little boxes marked R and Q are just a shed and a barn on the back side of the property. It's kind of funny looking at the house on this map because 17,000 square feet is a massive house, even by today's standards, but when you see it sitting on 14 acres, 17,000 square feet doesn't look all that big. The first level floor plan of the property starts with entering through this front door and then being greeted with a dining room to your left and then the living room to your right with a music room behind it, which is marked 104. Through the dining room is where you'll get to the kitchen, and then past the kitchen you can access what's called the jungle room, which is marked 114. This was basically like a den. And pretty much all these other rooms on the first level are just additional bedrooms, bathrooms, and office space. Shooting down over to the basement, we have a smaller footprint here. It's only about 500 square feet down in the basement, but this area consists of a pool room, a TV room, a laundry, and then another bedroom and bath. Last, we need to look at the floor plan of the second story. This is the section of the home that has been sealed off from the public for the past 40 years now, and it's actually even guarded by 2 men to make sure that nobody gets up there. We'll get into why this part of Graceland is sealed off here in a minute, but you can see based on the legend that this whole section of the house was basically Elvis's private oasis. The bottom right here marks where Elvis's bedroom was, and this illustration shows even where the locations of his bed and furniture were. Next to the bedroom, we have his bathroom and dressing room. Not a surprise to see such a big dressing room. This guy had a pretty crazy wardrobe. The top right section, 206 over here, was Elvis's office. This is another area I understand that he spent a ton of time. And then last here on the top left, we have his daughter Lisa Marie's bedroom and bathroom with a sun deck attached. It's a bit sad and surreal to look at that floor plan, guys, because not only was this second floor a place that Elvis spent a ton of time when he was home, but it's also where he passed away on August 16th, 1977, after his girlfriend at the time found him unconscious in the bathroom. If you were wondering why the second floor was off limit to the public, this is why. Nowadays, the general public can visit Graceland to see exactly how Elvis lived his life when he was not performing music or doing movies. The home is opened almost every day of the year with the exception of Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. There's a few different tour options that range in price from $48 up to $196 for the ultimate VIP tour. The Graceland.com website has a live stream of the Graceland property, which is pretty cool. I tuned in here a few different times when I was preparing for this video, and there's pretty much always about a dozen people surrounding the front door and front yard. But surprisingly, it's not super congested, which is cool because I guess that means if you do take a tour, you're not going to be bumping into a ton of people. After Elvis passed away, his ex-wife Priscilla was chosen to be the executor of the estate until his daughter Lisa Marie was old enough to take over. The estate costed around $500,000 per year to upkeep, which was so much to where at one point Priscilla was actually thinking about selling the house before she had the idea to convert Graceland into a public attraction. Thankfully, that move to convert it into a museum paid off because the house is now a cash machine, and as a result, Elvis's legacy will live on forever. If you enjoyed the episode today, guys, if you could hit that thumbs up button down below or leave a comment, I'd really appreciate it. And remember to click subscribe as well if you're not already a subscriber. I'm putting new videos just like this one out every week, but that's all I've got for you guys this time. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, see ya.